Get ready to dive deep into one of the most gripping legal battles of our time. I'm your host, Jim Chapman, and today we're unraveling the high-stakes drama surrounding one of the music industry's most enigmatic figures, Sean Diddy Combs. In a case that has captivated millions, the courtroom has become a battleground for fame, fortune, and the dark secrets that lurk beneath the glittering surface of celebrity life. As the gavel comes down, we'll explore the allegations, the testimonies, and the shocking twists that could change the course of Diddy's legacy forever. Was this case merely a clash of lifestyles or something much more sinister? With each episode, I will bring you exclusive insights, analysis, and witness testimony accounts that will leave you on the edge of your seat. So buckle up as we embark on this thrilling ride through the trial of the century, where the stakes are high, the drama is real, and the truth is anything but certain. This is the trial of Sean Combs. Let's get started. And welcome back to this 7th episode in the trial of Diddy. This is day 3 of the testimony phase of this trial, and Sean Combs has entered the courtroom at 9:40 a.m. New York time. He's wearing a cream-colored sweater and gray pants. He sat back in his chair and he started watching lawyers sift through paperwork. Cassie Ventura, she's going to be continuing her testimony today, Wednesday, May 15th. Now, she was on the stand for just over 4.5 hours yesterday, May 14th, and was in the midst of direct examination from prosecutors when court was adjourned for the day. Now, before the jury entered the courtroom, a little fireworks when the prosecution and defense, they started arguing over text message threads between Sean Combs and Cassie Ventura that the defense said they may want to submit as evidence during Ventura's cross-examination. Prosecutor Maureen Comey said the defense should have been given notice to the government about the exhibits much sooner. Apparently, this was sprung on them in the morning right before court. So Combs' defense team, they argued they've been pulling possible exhibits to respond to Ventura's direct testimony as it progresses. And the judge ruled in the favor of the defense in this matter, saying prosecutors should have brought up the issue sooner. And at 9:54 a.m., the jury entered the courtroom and Cassie Ventura entered. She took the stand for her second day of testimony. She's wearing a gray turtleneck dress and a coat. And as I told you yesterday, very much pregnant in her 3rd trimester. And Combs tracked her with his eyes as she walked into that witness box. Now, Prosecutor Emily Johnson, she continued with her questioning of Cassie Ventura, and she handed her a drive, and that drive contained photos and messages from Ventura's electronic devices. Ventura said she reviewed what was on the drive, and Johnson submitted that drive into evidence. The questioning then picks up where it left off on Tuesday. And that was discussing the incident at the Intercontinental Hotel in 2016, that famous hallway incident. And for the 3rd time, this jury has shown that infamous video where Sean Combs is just beating the absolute shit out of Cassie. And similar to yesterday, Cassie walks the jury through what they are looking at. Ventura said she recalled Combs throwing a vase with flowers in it. Quote, "I didn't get hit. I remember it hitting the wall and he was yelling at me when he threw it at me." She said as she was trying to leave the hotel, Combs was telling her something to the effect of, quote, that I wasn't going to leave there, that I couldn't. Now let me stop right there and discuss this for a second. Yesterday, when Cassie was testifying, I had an issue with some things that the prosecution, in my opinion, did not do. I felt like they didn't prove their case properly during the testimony. And what I mean by that is they didn't bring the accusations against Sean Combs full circle. Now, everyone needs to keep in mind, Sean Combs is not on trial for domestic abuse. If he were, he'd be found guilty. You wouldn't even have to have a trial because you've got a video out there and he would have definitely pled guilty to get a deal. But you can't file domestic abuse charges federally. That's a state crime. In this particular trial, Sean Combs is on trial for sex trafficking and coercion. And let's talk about coercion real quick because it's really important in this case. And I feel like yesterday it was not proved. What the prosecution basically has to prove is that Cassie was not into doing these things, that it was not her own free will. You wanted to hear something yesterday like Sean Combs made me do it. Sean Combs told me if I didn't participate in a freak off, he was going to kill me, or he was going to make videos public that he took of me, some sort of threat that forced her into doing these freak offs. That would be coercion. Now, she did say she was concerned about that, meaning the videos, but she never said Sean Combs threatened her with that. And that's important. I'll give you an example. If someone's in a relationship and they want you to have a freak off and you do it because you're in love with them and you agreed to do it because of that, but they don't say, if you don't do it, I'm going to do something to you, then that's on you. There's no coercion there. All they did was ask you, technically. They didn't threaten you with something in order to get you to do it. And yesterday I heard a whole lot of, I was in love with him and that's why I did it, or I was scared he may do something to me and that's why I did it. But never did I hear Sean told me he would do this if I didn't do it, meaning freak offs. So there's no coercion in there. At least they didn't prove it yesterday. And I'm hoping today that will come full circle, if you will. Now, with what I just told you, which is Cassie saying that she wanted to leave that hotel, and remember, she was in the midst of a freak off. We found out about that yesterday. At that point, she said she wanted to leave that hotel. And not only did she just say, Sean Combs told me you're not leaving, which she told him she wanted to leave, but you also found out yesterday, along with myself, that he beat the shit out of her in that lobby because she was leaving the freak off. And folks, that is coercion. If you leave or attempt to leave and someone beats the shit out of you to try to keep you to stay, that is coercion. And not only did she testify that Sean Combs did not let her leave, but if you'll remember, the officer that testified first in this trial, he said that Sean Combs said, you're not leaving. And the officer actually told Sean Combs she can leave if she wants to. So at this point, the prosecution is proving some coercion there. I just want to bring up that point, but let's move on with the trial. So the next thing the prosecutor has her do is read a series of text messages between Combs and herself after that altercation. Those texts read, call me, and these are from Sean to her, and then, yo, please call me, and then, I got 6 kids, and then, please call me again, and then, yo, please call me, I'm surrounded, and then call me, and then for my kids, help. Now, Ventura said that she responded eventually, and she responded with, quote, put the robe on. She said that because he was running around in a towel last time she saw him, and she was just looking out. And then he again texted her and said, call me now. Ventura said she responded again by telling Combs that she spoke to security and the escort had left. She told him, as long as you don't disturb any more guests, they'll leave you be. So prosecutor Emily Johnson, she then showed the jury 2 selfies of Cassie Ventura, which she said were taken on the Uber ride home from that hotel altercation. And she had Ventura kind of walk the jury through that. Ventura said she had a fat lip and she was seen wearing sunglasses, and she claimed that that was because she had a black eye underneath. So Combs again texted her asking her to call him. And this time he claimed the police were there and he was getting arrested. Quote, "Call me, the cops are here and you're going to abandon me all alone." So she responds back and she said that she had a premiere coming up for what she said was the biggest thing she's ever done in her life so far. Quote, "I have a black eye and a fat lip. You are sick for thinking it's okay to do what you've done. Please stay far away from me," unquote. She then testified that her friend was at her apartment when she got home from the hotel after that altercation. And she said that her friend was super upset. She had seen black eyes and busted lips before, and her friend called the police. Cassie said, "I answered a couple of questions when the police showed up, but when they wanted me to say who I was talking about, I wouldn't, so they left." So then Prosecutor Johnson asked her why she wouldn't tell the police Sean Diddy Combs' name. And Cassie responded, quote, "Just in that moment, I didn't want to hurt him that way. It was just too much going on." And she added that she wasn't ready yet. And then, in some shocking testimony, Johnson asked Cassie what happened next. And she testified that Diddy actually showed up at her apartment after he done beat the shit out of her in that hotel hallway. And he was banging, kicking, yelling outside her door, trying to get in her apartment. One of his assistants reached out to Ventura to tell her Combs was trying to get into her apartment. And Cassie went on to say, quote, "The behavior outside her door was pretty normal for Combs." She said that after that, she left and she went to the home of one of Sean Combs' security guards named D-Rock to feel safe. She later went to Combs' house to do a fitting for that upcoming movie premiere. The jury was then shown a photo of her in a gown that she wore to that event. She was in sunglasses, and when the prosecutor asked her why, she said it was to cover up that black eye. She said, "I had bruises all over my body that weren't completely covered by the makeup, and I had quite a bit of makeup on my face." Now, that movie premiere that Cassie Ventura was attending was for a romantic comedy that she actually starred in called The Perfect Match, and that was 2 days after that hotel assault. The jury was then shown a photo of the couple at an after party, and Ventura points out a bruise you can clearly see in that photo on her right shin. So the prosecutor then asked her to review a binder, and this binder contained more than a dozen photos of escorts that she and Sean Combs had hired for freak-offs over the years, all in different cities. Ventura confirmed the escorts were hired for freak-offs, and she testified that these men were often found through a contact with a business called Cowboys for Angels, and they advertised male companions. And if you'll remember, I briefly mentioned them in yesterday's testimony. They actually had a Showtime series called Gigolos at one point featuring this company. And Ventura identified the escorts with the names she knew them by: Ash, Tommy, Greg, and even a man known as Islander. She said she was the only one who typically reached out to the escorts to arrange for freak-offs because, quote, "it was her job. Combs wanted her to do it. And when she paid them, it was with Combs' money." So let me say something on this, because it's creating a lot of contention on my Facebook page with some pretty heavy back and forth in the comments. If you go to my page, you'll see what I'm talking about at Exposed Podcast Files on Facebook. And I got to admit, it's pretty bad optics for Cassie to be saying she was paying these escorts, even if it was with Diddy's money. I mean, I do have an issue with the prosecution not saying, well, at least yet, following up with a question like, why did you pay them and not Diddy? And the reason this creates such bad optics is because it makes Cassie look like a fully willing participant. And I just wanted to point that out. I'm not saying she was. I'm just saying this is the contention. These are the things people are having problems with. Now, the prosecution then showed a 2016 text message from Sean Combs to Cassie about freak-offs. And he suggested in this text that they have a, quote, proper freak-off without the drug ketamine involved. He actually wrote that a, quote, successful freak-off was when we can remember. He went on to say, I won't bring it up again until you are in the mood, suggesting that when she was, he would fly a man in known as Dave for the freak-off. And right there, before we go any further, guess what that is proof of? In text message form, that is proof of sex trafficking. Because he just admitted in that text that if she'd be willing to do the freak off, let him know, because he would fly Dave in, meaning Dave was in another state. He just proved it right there. Ventura then testified that ketamine was her preferred drug during freak offs, and she said it was because ketamine was very disassociative, meaning she would forget what she did after the freak off. Now, that's also the drug, incidentally, that Matt Perry OD'd on, if you'll remember. I did that case on Exposed. She then testified that she tried to avoid kissing escorts during the freak-offs. She felt it was, quote, too intimate and made her squeamish. But she said that Sean would request to see it, so she would do it. She was asked how she recovered from the freak-offs, and she said, quote, that she had an off and on addiction to opiates. She said she took them to come down after party drugs, such as ecstasy, which she said she also used during the freak-offs. Quote, opiates made me feel numb, which is why I relied on them so heavily. She added, I didn't want to feel what was actually going on in my mind, in my life, in real time. It was an escape for me. She said that Combs gave her the opiates at times, more commonly at the beginning of their relationship, and she testified she had a regular gastrointestinal issue from the drugs that she took. And she went on to say she had frequent UTIs from the freak-offs. These urinary tract infections were so frequent, she said she would often have an infection during freak-offs, and typically medications would stop working. Cassie then got into her account of how videos of the freak-offs were turned into blackmail materials as it related to her. And she said several times Sean Combs brought up the subject of sexually explicit videos of her when he was angry at her for something. She said, quote, one time I dated someone else and that's all it was about. I'm going to put out 2 embarrassing videos of you. She added that she thought it was just to hurt her. The jury was shown a text from 2013 where she texted Combs and she said, quote, please delete any video out of your iPhone that you have. Too many people have access to my stuff. And Combs responded to that text with, I deleted them. But there were times in their relationship, she said, when she saw those videos still existed, and she was under the impression they had been deleted. The prosecutor then asked Cassie about her 29th birthday party, and Cassie testified that to celebrate that 29th birthday, she wanted to go to a club called the Blind Dragon, and she wanted to do karaoke with her friends. But she said that Diddy told her he wanted to have a freak off. She said, quote, I told him that I wanted to stay out and celebrate with my friends, and in my mind, I just didn't want the burden of having to do that at the end of the night. I just wanted to have my birthday. She went on to say they went to the Blind Dragon for a little bit, but then Combs pulled her aside so many times, she just gave up. And she said, we went and we had a freak off. And at this point, the court took a break and privacy screens were being placed on multiple monitors in the courtroom, which I suspected means they're about to start showing the freak off videos or pictures of the freak off videos. They returned from the break and they could not figure out how to make these privacy screens work. So the judge, in some obvious frustration, tells the prosecution to just cover another line of questioning, and when they break for lunch, they'll figure out the privacy screen issues, which was kind of funny to me because you got all these genius lawyers that get millions of dollars, tons of them, and they can't figure that out. But a tradesman could probably figure it out in about 30 seconds. Just made me laugh. Now, for those interested, Sean Combs' three sons, Quincy Brown, Christian Combs, and Justin Combs, they were in the courtroom. They were seated in the spectators' gallery. Justin had his arm around Combs' mother, Janice Combs. And somewhat of a surprise, three of Sean Combs' daughters who had been attending the trial, including his twins, they were absent. Now, it came out later that at least in the twins' case, they weren't there because they had prom, and apparently it was prom for somebody that lives out of the state, so they had to fly to it. The prosecutor continued, and in this line of questioning, asked Cassie about a March 2014 incident in which someone told Cassie that he had actually seen a sexually explicit video of her while they were at an event in Atlantic City. And Cassie testified that immediately her thoughts went to, this dude's done seen a freak off video. And the jury was then shown a text message thread between Ventura and Diddy. Combs told her to find out more about what this guy knew about the video and where it came from. Combs told her to ask the person what the room looked like in that video. He then texted, quote, "This is crazy. Do not let him out of your sight. You got to tell him this is your life. This is serious." So she communicates this to the guy that told her about the video and sets up a meeting for the next day between the man and the DJ who actually had the video and had shown it to this guy. And she brought security with her. And that was at Combs' direction, she claimed. She said that Combs wanted to, quote, intimidate the man. Her manager, James Cruz, was also at that dinner. And then the prosecutor showed another text chain between Ventura and Combs. And Ventura tells Combs that she was suffering from sores on her tongue. Ventura testified that she attributed the sores to activities during the freak-offs, you think, including taking drugs and performing oral sex. He expressed sympathy for the message to her, writing, quote, "I'm sorry." Cassie then testified that Combs took her to sex clubs several times, where she at times had sex with Combs and a male escort named Jules. She said she was uncomfortable there, but she went on to say that if she told Combs she didn't want to go, he would typically try to convince her by framing it as, quote, a fun outing. She then testifies about Combs assaulting her at times when escorts were still in the hotel rooms. Johnson asked her how often Combs would get violent during these freak-offs, and Cassie testified that she was injured during freak-offs on several occasions when Sean would put his hands on her. She said it happened, quote, too frequently, and there were many times when Combs would assault her with an escort still in the hotel room. Quote, "He would grab me up, push me down, hit me in the side of the head, kick me, you name it." Ventura then described an altercation with Combs that left her with a permanent scar on her eyebrow. She said that when she was with two friends in her apartment before traveling to a music festival, Sean Combs suddenly entered the room and began yelling about her sleeping on the couch rather than packing for this trip. She said that's when Combs moved to attack her. Her friends jumped on his back, and during the altercation, Combs threw her down, and she cut her eyebrow on the corner of the bed. Afterwards, Combs had security bring her to a plastic surgeon in Beverly Hills to suture the gash. She said she later texted him a photo of the injury and wrote, quote, "so you can remember," which I thought that was a pretty badass retort on her part. She was then asked by the prosecutor why she responded with that photo, and she said, "I didn't want him to forget what he did," saying, quote, "at the very least, I just wanted him to be sorry about it." So then the jury saw a photo of Ventura and French Montana at a music festival shortly after the incident. And she testified that, and you could apparently see it in this picture, where she styled her hair over the wound so it would not be visible. Ventura then pointed to her eyebrow on the witness stand, and she said she had a permanent scar from that injury. "I cover it with makeup," she added. Now, Sean Combs, if you're curious what his response was to seeing this picture of what he did to Cassie, the jury was shown that response, that text message, and he responded back, quote, "You don't know when to stop. You have pushed it too far and continue to push. Sad." That was his response to throwing her on the ground, hitting her head on the side of a bed where it split her freaking eyebrow open. What a piece of shit. She testified after that 2013 attack in her apartment that caused her eyebrow gash, Ventura and Combs went to the Hamptons to have a freak off at a hotel with an escort named Dave. She said she blacked out on the drug GHB before the freak off and woke up nude in the shower. Not long after, they went forward with that freak off, even after this chick is passed out off GHB. She then testified about a boat that her and Diddy stayed on, a friend of theirs had, one time to attend the Cannes Film Festival, and they got in an argument over this boat after he accused her of stealing drugs from him. She said, quote, "He kicked me off the boat with no shoes early one morning, and I walked over to his staff hotel and I stayed in somebody's room." She said the next day she went to the festival and Combs kept giving her an evil glare. Quote, "He would grab my leg and squeeze my thigh as tight as he could. And I was wearing a beaded dress, so it was really painful." She went on to say on the flight back home, she switched seats so she would not have to sit next to Combs, but he traded seats with another person and sat next to her. On that flight, she said he played videos of freak-offs from his iPad, and Combs told her that he was going to embarrass her and release these videos. When they landed in New York, she said they went to dinner and then he wanted to have a freak-off. Can you believe that shit? But this girl is so twisted by this point by him that she had the freak off. When the prosecutor asked her why, she said, "Whatever was going to make him happy, not be angry at me, threatening me, I was willing to do. I just didn't want to feel scared anymore, and it was the one thing he made me feel like I was good at." And at this point, she's a couple of hours into her testimony today, and she's speaking with a very controlled and matter of fact, I guess you could describe it, tone. The jury was then shown more text between Combs and Ventura, including messages from 2013, which showed Diddy and Cassie planning a freak-off and discussing which escorts to invite. Quote, "It's just one more person knowing our secret," Ventura said to Combs in that text. She testified that she was referring to the shame of the secret of the freak-off, saying, I didn't want to do them. I just didn't want to be part of that. In another text message dated January 7th of 2017, Ventura told Combs, nothing good comes out of freak-offs anymore. She went on to say in that text, you treat me like Ike Turner treated Tina, which was bad, y'all. Just trust me. He beat the shit out of Tina on the daily. When asked what she meant by the Turner reference, Ventura testified Combs was abusive and controlling. Quote, I mean, he was actually physically abusive. He put me down a lot. As much as I was built up, he would put me down verbally. But it's also just the sheer embarrassment, like how he treated me in front of other people. Now, among the many texts between Cassie and Sean Combs that were read into evidence today, there were some loving messages between the couple. One thing that Ventura texted him was, you are truly the most extraordinary man. And this was on Father's Day. She went on to say, thank you for always showing me love and happiness the way it's supposed to be. Adding she couldn't wait until the couple had a baby of their own. And when she was asked by the prosecutor why she sent those messages, and most people right now are probably like, all the things he's done and she sends him that. Well, her response was, because I loved him and it was Father's Day. And it was at this point that the court recessed for lunch. And before the jury was brought back into the room after lunch, several things came out that were pretty interesting. First, Combs' attorneys said the defense had to adjust strategy since Ventura's testimony was a little different than they expected. They were talking about what exhibits the defense might submit into evidence. Sean Combs' attorney, Tina Gargos, said Cassie Ventura's direct examination went differently than the defense had expected, so they need to adjust their strategy. And in addition to all of that, the judge had to instruct attorneys not to engage in witness coaching. The judge said he won't instruct the witnesses, but told the attorneys for the victim witnesses not to engage in what's known as witness coaching, or passing on messages from prosecutors to their clients while they're testifying. An attorney for the victim witness, Mia, going by her pseudonym, said he needed to be able to talk to her on breaks during her testimony. Quote, we are not going to put words in her mouth, but I need to be able to support her when she wants to talk about what she's experiencing on the stand. Quote, to be candid, her nerves are through the roof. She would have taken these things to her grave. These are the worst things that have ever happened to her. And what brought all this up was the defense had asked that the victim witnesses be instructed not to speak to their attorneys or the prosecutors about their testimony while they're on the stand. There was also more discussion between prosecutors and the judge about showing sealed evidence only to jurors. If you remember, yesterday I mentioned about the freak-offs and would that be shown in open court or how that was going to work. Of course, as I mentioned earlier in this podcast, they were looking at privacy screens. The prosecution also clarified that it only planned to display potentially explicit images, not video, for now, but that the defense may use explicit video later. In addition to private screens, videos would require the use of headphones for the jurors. But that seemed like a problem for another day, and we're going to get back to this trial. Shortly after all of this, Combs entered the courtroom after lunch, as did Cassie and the jury, and the prosecutors continued direct examination of Cassie. So Cassie was asked by the prosecutor to look over some images from freak-offs that only she and the jury could see. And in one of those images, she identified a future witness for the prosecution who has been referred to under the pseudonym Mia, but is listed in court papers as victim number 4. Now, this person, a former employee of Combs who accused Combs of coercing her into sex. Ventura is also identifying still images from a freak-off video of her having sexual contact with Jules, Dave, and Greg, 3 of the escorts that have been referred to in her testimony several times. She said the images were taken from videos that were saved on an electronic device that she was under the impression was broken, but turned over as broken evidence to the government as potential evidence. So apparently they were able to pull off whatever they needed to. The jury was then shown sexually explicit images taken from some of the freak-off videos. And when they were shown this, one female juror lets out a deep breath and rested her hands on her chest as the image was placed on the monitor before her. A male juror actually looked at the screen at one of the images and his eyes appeared to move away, like quickly. And a different male juror, he looked up at the image and then started writing notes on his notepad. Cassie then testified that multiple employees of Sean Combs also witnessed him abusing her over the years, including members of his security team, his management team, assistants. And she said one assistant actually told her they quit because of the way Combs treated her. She testified that she initiated physical fights with Sean Combs at times herself during their relationship, but that he was not injured by her during any of those incidents. However, she said when he was physical with her, there would be bruises that would often require days of hiding out to recover from. And then Johnson asked her about the first time Combs had ever been physical with her. She wanted to know how it happened and what were Cassie's thoughts when she saw this side of Combs, this more physical side. And Cassie said she was at a dinner when she saw Combs flirting with somebody else. And she said another person saw that Cassie had noticed this flirting and didn't have, let's just say, a approved look on her face. And this person shrugged their shoulders, but Cassie suspected they went and told Sean Combs that Cassie was noticing all this and was none too happy. Well, they get in the car after dinner and she said, quote, "He hit me in the side of my head and I fell to the floor of the car." She went on to say his security and driver were also present in that car. Quote, "I was just shocked. I didn't necessarily understand what had happened and why he was so angry, except for the little bit he said as he was hitting me in the car." She said, "I just went home and kind of hid out after that until the injuries healed." She then testified about another time where she was stomped on and beaten by Sean Combs. She recalled being made to hide out at a hotel for a week so her visible wounds could heal. Ventura wanted to go home to her mother, she said, but she knew she was not allowed, and she also said that wouldn't be safe. Quote, "I understand Sean's capabilities, his access to guns, the threats he made prior to that." She said, "I was privy." She said, "I never wanted to tell my mom the truth about the abuse because I was ashamed. I also didn't want to put my mother in danger for knowing anything of that magnitude." And I think that really speaks a lot to this whole deal. Look, as I mentioned earlier, the Facebook, some of these posts I'm putting up about Sean Combs, it's like 50-50 one way or the other, with people defending him, people saying he's a piece of shit, etc. As I've been posting these updates on the Facebook page, it's an absolute war in some of these. Go check it out. You've got people basically on both sides of this deal. And I just want to say, first of all, anyone who is in any way trying to defend a grown-ass man, Sean Combs or anybody else, beating the shit out of a little teeny tiny woman like Cassie Ventura over and over again, that says a lot about you. I'm just going to tell you the truth. A lot about you. Second, and some of these people feel they're making a valid point by saying, why did it take her so long to leave? She must have liked it, etc. And shockingly, most of the women saying that are women, which surprises me anyway. But here's what I say to that. It is a valid question to ask, but it also shows that you're only looking at the face of this whole deal. Look deeper. Ask yourself what kind of power this guy possessed. I mean, he had so much power, he could likely make someone disappear with very little effort. Most of us, 99.99%, will never understand that power. We'll never have that kind of money. So you think she might have been a little scared to say anything? Would you have said something? Ladies out there that are criticizing her for not coming forward sooner, would you have? I'm sure you're all Billy badasses, and it don't matter who it is, you're going to tell, which is bullshit. You've got a guy wielding this much power. I don't think any of us would know what we would do until we're actually in that position. And with what I just told you she testified to, which was the fact she was even scared to tell her own mother because she was worried her mother then may know too much, I think that tells you all you need to know about why she didn't say anything sooner. But we'll get back to the questioning. The prosecutor stays on kind of that same course, discussing with Cassie these details of physical abuse. And Cassie describes yet another time that Sean Combs was violent with her. She said that after a party at an LA club, Combs called her names. Ventura said she drunkenly punched him in the face in response, which prompted Combs to beat her, stomping on her face as she lied on the floor of an Escalade. When they got to the house, she said she jumped out of the car. She tried to run down the street because she knew that ass was about to be kicked. And Combs' security eventually caught up with her and brought her into the house. Ventura said she finally looked at her face once she was at Combs' house and she didn't even recognize herself. She said her whole face was just knots and bleeding. Everything was swollen, and I looked horrible. In another incident she detailed involving domestic violence, she testified that sometime during the first half of her relationship with Sean Combs, she and her friends went to a party at Prince's house. That's right, Prince, like 1999 Prince. Now, she said she didn't want to tell Combs about this party she was going to with a friend because Combs would get pissed and not let her go. She arrives at the party, and ruh-roh, Combs is there, and he sees her. He didn't know she was coming to this party, and he was pissed. So she said she ran out of the party as fast as she could. She said later Combs burst into the room at a hotel she was at, and she said they went into the bedroom so her friend, who was sleeping on the couch, wouldn't hear anything. And she said, quote, "He beat me up in that room. He was throwing luggage at me and calling me all kinds of names." She said she had bruises on her face and knots on her head afterwards. Then the jury gets shown an email Cassie sent to her mom and one of Sean Combs' employees. And this was in December of 2011. And that email said that Combs had threatened to release, quote, explicit sex tapes of her, including one on Christmas Day. In the email, Ventura also said Combs threatened to hurt her and Scott Mescudi, who is also known as Kid Cudi, who Ventura was dating at this time. But when Combs brought up hurting her and him, it was not with his own hands. Combs said he'd be out of the country when it happened. She testified that Combs went into a rage when he found out she was dating Kid Cudi. And she said Combs lunged at her with a wine opener between his fingers after he read through some emails referencing Kid Cudi on her phone. And she also added, at this time, it was in the middle of a freak-off that this is all going on. She said she managed to escape the freak-off in a hotel room to go to another hotel where she had been staying. She then called Scott Mescudi, Kid Cudi, on a burner phone to come pick her up. And Ventura said after speaking with one of Combs' employees, she went over to Combs' house to talk about things and try to resolve the situation. But he was totally irate. Quote, he told me about videos that he had that he was going to release and that he was going to hurt Scott and I, adding that the video he was referring to were freak-off videos. Then the prosecutor asked her about a specific incident with Kid Cudi and a bomb in his car. And Cassie said that Combs told her that rapper Kid Cudi's car would be blown up, and she said Combs told her that he wanted Kid Cudi's friends to see the car blown up in the driveway of his home. And well, just a short time later, Kid Cudi's car blows up. Now, sometime after the car blew up, Combs, Ventura, and Kid Cudi, they had a meeting at what is known as Soho House about the relationship. And Kid Cudi asked about his vehicle. Cassie said Combs responded, "What vehicle?" which prompted that meeting to end after that. She then testified about an altercation in 2015 in which she said Sean Combs beat her up in a Las Vegas hotel while he hosted a party in an adjoining room. Quote, he punched me, kicked me. I was trying to run away and I made it into the bathroom. She described how she was trying to hide underneath the toilet to get away from him. Members of Combs' security and management teams finally came into the room to end it, she said, and she described how she had black eyes and golf ball-sized knots on her forehead. Man, he loved to hit her in the face. She said that one of Combs' security guards actually started to cry when he saw her. She said she had to stay at Combs' home for a little less than a week to recover from those injuries, and that Combs' son was also staying at the house with her at the time. When Combs saw her injuries during a FaceTime call that he placed with her, he told her to put on more makeup so his son wouldn't see the injuries. Well, it's all coming out now, ain't it, Sean? The prosecution then asked Cassie about Combs' violence with people outside of her. Did she ever witness abuse by other people outside of herself? And she said yes, even to include some of his employees. She recounted one time that she saw Combs punch someone else in the head. On a separate occasion, on an international trip, Ventura testified she saw Combs drag his assistant, Mia, out of her bed and onto the deck outside of her room after she resisted when he tried to take her phone. Cassie went on to describe seeing Combs hold her friend over the balcony railing at her Los Angeles apartment early one morning, saying, quote, there was an incident where I was asleep in my room, and when I came out, Sean was holding her and threw her onto the patio furniture. I saw him bring her back over the railing of the balcony and then throw her onto that patio furniture. Prosecutor Emily Johnson then displayed a headshot of Ventura's friend, and Ventura confirmed that that was her and said to this day she's still friends with that woman. She went on to detail an incident where Combs destroyed a friendship she had for 17 years, saying that friendship was with someone she termed her best friend. It ended in 2018 after an altercation with Sean when he came in and saw that they were going to do drugs, her and this girl, and he hit the girl in the head with a wooden hanger. The prosecutor then asked her if she was still addicted to drugs, and she went on to say that Sean Combs kept a Louis Vuitton toiletry bag, and he called it his med bag or medicine bag, and it was full of drugs that he obtained from dealers that he knew. She said his drugs of choice included MDMA, cocaine, marijuana, ketamine, and GHB. She said that she and Combs took these drugs, especially during freak-offs. And she admitted that sometimes she did the drugs on her own, especially opiates like Norco or Percocet, and downers like Xanax or Valium. When she attempted to stop taking opiates at various points during their relationship, she said she would begin to experience severe withdrawals and described it like flu sick. And she admitted she heavily depended on opiates, but she went on to say that in 2022, she sought professional help, attended rehab, and is no longer taking pills. And then she tells of this horrible situation that occurred in 2018 near the end of the relationship. She said they had dinner and afterward they went back to Ventura's home. And she said that is where Combs raped her. Ventura was at this point together with her now husband, Alex Fine, but she said that her and Combs, they had a nice meal. The rapport was playful, even romantic, she said, as he brought her home. Quote, and then he raped me in my living room. I just remember crying and saying no over and over again, but it was very fast. Now, if you'll remember, I told you the defense was trying to get her husband removed from the courtroom for all the testimony, and the prosecution would not allow that to happen, but they did agree that he would have to leave during a rape accusation. Well, what I just told you, he was not in the courtroom for. She went on to say that later, after a positive outing, she had sex with him one more time. Ventura said that time was by choice. When asked why she had sex with him that time, she pointed to their decade together and said, quote, you just don't turn your feelings off that way. She went on to say that she maintained intermittent contact with Sean Combs after they finally broke up. And she said typically they texted casually to check in on each other. But in March of 2019, Combs sent her a message referring cryptically to, quote, iPads full of skeletons, which she says meant sexual videos he had recorded. I think anybody with a brain would derive at that conclusion. In messages from 2019, Combs told Ventura, if I was you, I'd get my money. And Ventura said that Combs wanted to be reimbursed because her current husband, Alex Fine, was formerly her personal trainer who Combs paid for. Combs also messaged her, quote, you will not be threatening me, and said that she had too many iPads full of skeletons. Ventura responded with, do you want me to tell the truth? It's way deeper than iPads. She went on to say there were way more than freak-offs, there was abuse, and there was many things that happened over our relationship. Now, all of these texts back and forth are being shown in open court. And it was at that point that she broke down in tears as she talked about going to rehab and trauma therapy in February of 2023. She said she was having flashbacks during a shooting for a music video with another artist, and she also said she was suicidal. Quote, I didn't want to be alive anymore at that point. I couldn't take the pain that I was in anymore. And so I just tried to walk out the front door into traffic, and my husband would not let me. Ventura was then asked how much the lawsuit she had with Combs was settled for, and she testified that she settled her lawsuit against Combs for $20 million. And she's referring to the civil suit she had with Combs that actually got me covering this whole deal over a year ago. The last question the prosecution asked was an estimate of how many freak-offs she participated in, to which Cassie said hundreds of freak-offs. And she added that since breaking up with Combs in 2018, she hadn't done any freak-offs. And that was it. Tomorrow, the defense is going to cross-examine Cassie, and you're going to hear the other side of this saga. And of course, I will bring you all the details. Thank you so much for listening. Check out the Patreon, patreon.com/exposed podcast files, early releases, bonus episodes, files, and even quarterly gifts for top tier Patreon celebrity members. And don't forget to follow us wherever you're listening right now. That way you're alerted when these episodes drop. And until next time, for Exposed Scandalous Files of the Elite, I'm your host, Jim Chapman. Much love.